All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Fruita City Council meeting. It is now 7:02 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Deb, would you please call roll?
Councillor Buck. Councillor Lenhart is present virtually. Councillor Harvey.
Here.
Councillor Cry is also present virtually. Councillor O'Brien.
Here.
Councillor Bremen.
Here. All right. If you'd all please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda, Mr. Mayor, but I will note for the record that there was an addition to the council packet from the Grand Valley Pets Alive for the outside agency funding requests under item 4B.
All right, thank you for that. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
Second.
Councillor Lenhart.
Yes.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes.
Councillor Cry.
Yes.
Councillor Buck.
Yes.
Councillor Bremen.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, we've got one proclamation tonight and some outside agency funding presentations. So I'm going to start by reading the proclamation and then we'll have, I know we've got Kayla Brown from the Fruita Chamber here. So I'll let her say a few words once I get done with that. So this is the proclamation to support your local Chamber of Commerce Day, October 20th, 2021. Whereas the Fruita Area Chamber of Commerce works with local businesses, merchants, and industry to advance the civic, economic, industrial, professional, and cultural life of the city of Fruita and Grand Valley wide. And whereas chambers of commerce have contributed to the civic and economic life of the city of Fruita for 64 years since the founding of the Fruita Area Chamber of Commerce in 1957. And whereas this year marks the 109th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, a national institution to represent the unified interests of U.S. under President William Howard Taft. Whereas the Chamber of Commerce and its members provide citizens with a strong business environment that increases employment, the retail trade and commerce, and industrial growth in order to make the city of Fruita a better place to live. And whereas the Chamber of Commerce encourages the growth of existing industries, services, and commercial firms and encourages new firms and individuals to locate in the city of Fruita. And now therefore be it resolved that we, the Fruita City Council, does hereby proclaim October 20th, 2021 as Support Your Local Chamber of Commerce Day in the city of Fruita. Did you want to come up and say a few words, Kayla?
Hello, thank you so much. We really appreciate the proclamation for Support Your Local Chamber of Commerce Day. Chamber of Commerces are so important to our community and we're very honored to be part of the Fruita community. I'll save the rest for our next presentation because I do have a little bit of a presentation for you guys for the next item on the agenda. So thank you again.
Here, come on up. Thank you. Oh, we're supposed to stand.
Okay.
Did you get Ken and Karen in there? All right. With that, we're going to move into our second item on presentations. We've got 2022 budget presentations from our outside agency funding requests. We've got 4 of these. Since we have 4 of them, we're going to ask everyone to try and keep it brief and on task tonight. And our first one is the Fruita Area Chamber of Commerce. So we've got Kayla up here to present to us.
Give it a second to load. Perfect. All right. Good evening. As most of you know, I'm Kayla Brown, the Executive Director for the Fruita Area Chamber of Commerce. I appreciate your time tonight to consider your budget for helping fund the Fruita Chamber this year. I wanted to take a quick moment just to overview what we've done over the last 12 months. Before I begin, I just wanted to briefly go over what our mission, vision, and core values are. The Fruita Chamber's mission is to grow a prosperous and sustainable business community. Our vision is to cultivate a vibrant community by being a trusted advocate and viable partner to the businesses in the Grand Valley. And our core value is to support and advocate for our business community through integrity, leadership, collaboration, and engagement. Membership continues to grow at the Fruita Chamber. This year, we've already added 95 new members as of October, and that's a new record for the Fruita Chamber. As of today, we have 383 total members, and we're still working to improve our retention rate, but we're finally looking at accurate numbers for active members of the Fruita Chamber. The largest membership has ever been to date was well over 6 years ago with just over 400 members at the chamber. And our goal this year was to hit 400 new members. And I'm very confident that we'll hit that by the end of the year. So one of the questions that I ask myself is, what does this growth tell us? And it tells us that people are seeing what the Fruita Chamber is doing and they want to be a part of it. Not only do they want to be part of the Fruita Chamber, but they want to be part of the Fruita community. They want to work here, they want to be here, and we're very proud to support a local community like that. The chamber is your community connection. And I wanted to share just a few things that our members are saying about us. So you can understand the importance of the chamber. Haley's Oven is a new business that launched during the pandemic last year. Stephanie Berner is the owner, and she sent over this nice testimonial. She says, opening a new business in the middle of a pandemic may not have been the best idea, but our relationship with the FACC couldn't have happened at a more perfect time. We are proud to be affiliated with the Fruita Chamber and will continue to be in the future. Mondi Wake Zone was a business that launched just a few short years ago. Not only were they a new business to Fruita, but they were a new industry to Colorado. And Cody Imondi, the owner of Imondi Wake Zone, says, the Fruita Area Chamber of Commerce has been an excellent resource for us as a new business and industry to the state of Colorado. The resources and advocacy the Fruita Chamber has provided us as members has been significant. Grand Junction Economic Partnership is a partner of the chamber as well as the city of Fruita, and they are champions of economic development. And they said the Fruita business community is a really tight-knit, supportive, and progressive community. Fruita is open to a wide variety of businesses, both large and small, driven by love and devotion to the city and its unique culture. The Fruita business community is a wonderful asset to the Grand Valley. And we couldn't agree more. We're so proud to be in Fruita and representing our Fruita businesses. I know I included the 2020 budget and profit and loss sheet, as well as the 2021 year-to-date budget and profit and loss. So I just wanted to touch on those numbers a little bit more in depth for you guys. As you heard in last year's presentation, in 2019, we ended in the red at negative $8,000. And 2020 was the first time that the chamber had actually operated in the black in several years. So we were very proud of that accomplishment. Even during a pandemic, we were still able to retain and recruit new members. And this year, we're actually projecting an even more significant profit than what we had originally planned for. The numbers on the profit and loss sheet do show 71,000. But I do want to take into consideration that there was a PPP grant that the Fruita Chamber did receive this year. So year to date, we're looking at just over 50,000 in profit. That money is going directly back into our community through the chamber being able to hire significant staff to be able to continue to recruit and retain membership. So we're very proud to see those numbers continuously go up and be able to put it back into the community and back into the chamber's core mission and values. So just a couple of benefits of your local chamber. Business advocacy. We're at the front lines of our local businesses and have a boots on the ground approach. We're always checking in with members. We like to have face-to-face interactions with them and make sure that they know that their voices are being heard and we're there for them. Local support. Everything we do revolves around supporting our local businesses. Contributing to a quality of place. The FACC is often the first point of contact with a resident or visitor when they're coming to the area and looking for information. So we're always that trusted source for them to be able to come to. And then community connection. one of the best ways to support your local community is to be involved with your local chamber. Just to highlight some of our 2020 achievements, we did host our first annual women's conference, and it was sold out. Being a first-year event with over 200 women, we were really proud to see our Women in Business group continue to grow, and we're already planning the second annual women's conference. The nice thing about Women in Business, it is open to anybody. So it can be someone who has a business at their home. They just have an MLM company and they're really wanting to connect and get involved in their community. Maybe they're not quite ready for a chamber membership. It's a good way for them to open up the opportunity to connect and grow their business. So we've been really proud of that group and how it's continued to grow. Intern opportunities. We have really strived to connect local businesses with intern opportunities with CMU and the Workforce Center. It's important for us to have our future workforce stay here in the Grand Valley once they graduate CMU. The chamber itself has already retained 2 interns from CMU, and we've offered both of them jobs with the chamber. One officially not yet, but it's a very important program to us, and it's really important for us to see the future of our workforce stay here in the Grand Valley. And then member recruitment, as I mentioned, we're at an all-time record high this year for member recruitment with 96 new members year to date. And then our goals for 2022 is to continue to grow our membership and retain those members that we have over the last year. And then we're also going to have a dedicated position to continue to retain that membership. So that way we don't lose all of these members we've worked so hard to recruit. We will also continue to fill the gaps in our intern program that we're in the process of launching. We want to have a mentorship so that businesses can connect directly with students and help offer tips and advice and really open their doors to helping our students feel welcome and like they have a place in the workforce here. We also plan to launch a student-sponsored membership where member businesses can sponsor a student, and that student will be able to come to any chamber events, and then we'll also have specialty events for students to do speed interviewing and mini job fairs and things like that. And then we're also really developing to define our strategic plan. We actually have a board retreat scheduled for this Friday, and we're going to be talking about future goals and growth, the 3, 5, and 10-year plan for the chamber. So we are in it for the long run, and we're ready to continue to grow and hold that growth. And with that, I just wanted to leave my contact information. If anybody wants to get involved or has questions, they can always find information on our website, our current list of board of directors, and what the chamber's been up to. Our website, fruitachamber.org. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? All right. Well, thank you for all you guys do in the community and for coming in and presenting.
Thank you so much.
All right, our next one is Colorado West Land and Trust. Do we have Elena Moyer here, Conservation Director? Is she online?
I am.
All right, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I wish I could be there in person with all of you, but this actually worked out well. I have a new baby at home. So it's good to see you guys. Thank you. It's good to see you. I think it's been a few years since I've been in front of you, and I'm just going to share my screen here. All right, that should be up for everyone. Can you guys
No,
see it?
it's not.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having us. My name is Ilana Moya. I'm with Colorado West Land Trust. Last time I was in front of you, we were Mesa Land Trust. Since then, we have merged with Black Canyon Regional Land Trust out of Montrose. So we now serve a 6-county area. And in 2020 was our 40th anniversary. So we all had a good laugh about all the events we could not do that we look forward to participating in at some point. But our mission as a land trust is to protect and enhance agricultural lands, wildlife habitat, and scenic lands in Western Colorado, really with the aim to benefit our community at large, enrich lives, and provide outdoor opportunities and recreation. Part of our role is making sure that the Western Colorado that we all love remains the Western Colorado that we love, and at the same time, not come in conflict with the growth that we want to see, instead just focusing on maintaining the lifestyle that we all enjoy. So we have a regional scale with a local approach. So the tools that we use are conservation agreements or conservation easements, wherein we conserve private lands for the future. Everything we do is voluntary with landowners. We've conserved about 121,000 acres across the 6-county region. A lot of that acreage is in places such as Glade Park, big ranches around Crawford, stuff like that. But about 3,000 acres of that is in the valley floor, and a significant portion of that is in the community separator program or the buffer program, which the city of Fruita has been involved with. Land conservation is one of the tools that we use. We also steward and monitor properties. And more, we see the value, and we've become a lot more involved with community engagement and connecting people to the outdoors. That bottom picture is some of the work that we've done on lunch loops and the Three Sisters. And I know we've had conversations with the city of Fruita, some of the staff, about possible, trail connections and playing a role there as well, which is definitely something we'd be happy to talk more about. But here tonight, I'm here to talk about the community separator area, and sometimes called the buffer program. And this was actually an award-winning program established in 2000. So our predecessors got together, this Mesa County, Grand Junction, City of Fruita, and Town of Palisade got together and said, we are growing at a rapid rate. How do we maintain the distinct qualities of these communities and at the same time allow for growth and have some separation between the communities? So they drew up the community separator program. And right now, the land trust role is to complete voluntary conservation easement transactions within those 2 designated zones. So I'll show you those in a minute here. Our role is part of the reason we see success with this program is that it is non-regulatory. So everything, as I mentioned, is voluntary. It's transaction oriented. Landowners sign up only if they want to be part of the program to conserve their properties. The conservation easements are permanent. So when we look at conserving properties, we look very carefully at the implications of conservation of those properties and making sure that the working landscape we are conserving will be around for forever. We do a lot of outreach to eligible landowners within the buffer programs and surrounding areas about conservation options, some of the benefits for them. And then a big role we play is seeking grant funding for these transactions. And I'll break down some of our budget in a few slides. Our buffer accomplishments to date, I'll go back and forth between community separator and buffer. Buffer is a good way to visualize it. We've done 45 conservation easements, 11 of those in Fruita, 34 in Palisade. And the acreage is pretty much split between the 2 buffer areas. And then we've done significant work outside of those designated lines as well in both Palisade and in Fruita. So for the 21-year existence of the program, we've conserved working farms in Fruita that have been passed on to the next generation, which is a big national issue. This idea of passing farms and ranches on to the next generation, making sure that there are people there to take over the farms. We've conserved about 270 acres of peach orchard and vineyards in the Palisade area, which is one of the 2 areas in the entire state of Colorado where you can grow fruit like that. So we want to make sure that we're protecting the assets that we have here in the Grand Valley. We've done 2 very significant properties along the Colorado River and the Colorado Riverfront Trail. And I'll show you a picture of the one on the Fruita side. And not only do those 2 properties provide incredible access, obviously with the Riverfront Trail going through, and I know Fruita has been a big proponent of expanding that trail, and it's lovely to see the trail now going all the way out to Cocopelli. But those properties also protect the riparian habitat and bird habitat along the river that's so critical to wildlife in Mesa County. We've done properties along Highway 6 and I-70, and we see those, and also the Fruit and Wine Trail out in Palisade. And properties along these scenic routes are really important, not only for those of us that live in the community and enjoy them, but also for tourism and having people come in from out of state that enjoy the views from these various scenic routes. So just a couple maps and some photos of our work. This is the Palisade area, and the red blobs are conservation easements on private land. The green outline is the buffer area. And then the Arnett property is this property here on the very western end of the Palisade buffer, and the eastern terminus of the Riverfront Trail runs through this property. So that was one of our first properties that involved the Colorado Riverfront Trail, and the trail does actually go across that property now. And that's a separate easement held by Mesa County. And as I mentioned, one of the things we focus on in the Palisade area are these lovely orchards. This is the Ruckman family. You can see 4 generations here of the Ruckman family. And the nice thing here is the patriarch made the investment in the land. His son was able to buy property, and then his grandsons are now farming the property. So conservation easements have been an excellent tool for multiple generations to get involved in farming and to stay farming, so that we'll see, you know, these farms continue and be part of our local economy moving forward. And then this is the Fruita buffer side. The property, so this is a very long, thin buffer compared to the Palisade one, which goes out more. And we see a bulk of our work in Fruita right in the middle of the buffer, where we have bulk of our easements. The one that we completed along the Riverfront trails down here, right on the riverfront. So as you're coming from Fruita, right before you turn around the interstate, right before the interstate makes that big turn, is where that that property is. So people go right next to this property on the Riverfront Trail. And actually, we do hold an easement on Snook's Bottom property as well, which I know we have in partnership with the city, has a park on it. And this Dixie Williams, she has since passed away. Some of you probably know her and remember her. She was the first landowner we worked with for the entire buffer program. She owned a few hundred acres in the Fruita buffer, right in the center of those properties that I pointed out in the middle of the map. And she was instrumental in kind of giving a stamp of approval to the property. She was a very traditional landowner. She was happy to know that her ranch would forever be around for farming and ranching in perpetuity. And since then, her properties passed on to some other people that bought the property, and they continue to farm and ranch it. So I imagine that Dixie's probably very pleased looking down and seeing that this property's continuing to be productive and a good good farm. And this is the property that I mentioned right on the Colorado River. The Riverfront Trail, it would be to our right from this vantage point. So those are just a couple examples of so many wonderful projects that we've done. I wish I had time to talk about all the families that we've worked with, because that's really the best part of our work. But no presentation's complete without some pie charts and graphs. So the total value, this is just conservation easements within the buffer area. So this is not the entire work of the land trust. We've conserved about $26 million worth of land. The buffer partners have put in almost $2 million. So that's Fruita, Palisade, Grand Junction, and Mesa County. And landowners have donated almost 15 million. And then outside funding. So this is a lot of this is Great Outdoors Colorado, the farm programs through NRCS. Some of you may be familiar with those, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife as well have put in almost $10 million. You'll see the Palisade number says 0%. It's actually 0.3%. But I guess Excel decided it was gonna do its own rounding of that. But the critical part is that Fruita and Palisade have consistently been part of this program since its inception. And that has been such a wonderful tool, or such a wonderful thing to share with funders. When we go seek grants for properties within the buffer, being able to say that we have these partners that have been with the program for over 20 years really illustrates the importance of the program to the local community. So I want to thank each of you for being part of that. So looking forward to 2022, we'll continue pursuing conservation easements on working farms. I'm currently in conversation with 2 farmers in the Palisade area and 2 farmers in the Fruita area. One is a very big rancher out in the Fruita area. So hopefully that will be some success that we can share with you in the near future. There has been an increase in the Colorado state tax credit to make it very nice incentive for landowners to pursue conservation easements. So our plans this year is to do some mailings out to landowners to notify them of this increased incentive. And we plan to partner with municipalities on public access projects as needed. These are ongoing conversations, more of a long-term vision for where our communities want to go. And we sit in a place where we can provide some tools and some resources to help with some of that planning. And we're happy to play a role as needed on those. So our request is the same as it's been for a while, $6,900 and then $2,000 for appraisal costs if those come up. I do anticipate using the $2,000 as we hope to have, as I mentioned, those 4 projects, probably at least 2 of them moving forward in 2022. And I just want to end with a quote from Bruce Talbot. I know he's a Palisade farmer, but many of you are probably familiar with the Talbot farms. And so many landowners that we work with, conservation easements are a business planning tool, and they're a tool they use to know that their property is going to be around for future generations and that they can make investments in farming, in ranching on their properties because they know that conservation easement will help them stick it out in farming and ranching, which isn't always an easy thing to do. So I'll end with this beautiful shot of the heart of the buffer area in Fruita. And I want to thank all of you for your investment over, as I mentioned, 21 years now, and happy to take any questions as well.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? All right, well, thanks for being here and presenting tonight.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, we're going to move into our third presentation is One Riverfront Commission. We've got Catherine Ventling. Is she here or is she remote? All right, well then, yeah, you don't look like Catherine. All right.
My name is Fred Barbero. I'm one of the co-chairs of One Riverfront, previously known as the Riverfront Commission. Our role is to help the local communities to build the Riverfront Trail and also to help maintain the Riverfront Trail as well. Fruita has contributed funding to support us for a number of years now, and we're requesting that you continue that funding. I wanted to mention just 4 events that have occurred in the past year through our program that have impacted on Fruita itself. The first program is called the Save a Life Jacket program. This program was initiated approximately 5 years or so ago by an individual because he lost a very good friend through a drowning in the Colorado River, and his friend did not have a life jacket on at the time. So this individual initiated a program where he was building kiosks at the boat launches and putting life jackets there to be utilized for free. I'm sure many of you have probably seen some of those kiosks. He came to us to ask us to provide some help to him for that program. And now in this last year, he's left the area, and we took the program over for a short period of time. It involves having the kiosks, making sure that they are that they have life jackets in them, going downriver to where they've been left after being used, and bringing them back upriver and putting them back in the kiosks. We have been instrumental in helping to build new kiosks, and we're continuing to help build new kiosks all the way from Palisade down to the Loma boat ramp. The funding which you all provided to us was used partly to provide signage at those kiosks to let people know how you're supposed to use a life jacket, how you put it on, and how it functions and how you get the correct size for it. Second program I want to mention are one that I'm sure that each of you are familiar with, and that is the concert series, which we are in charge of. They're put on at the Jim Robb State Park here in Fruita. We didn't do them last year, just like a lot of other things didn't get done last year, but we returned to them this year. We put on, or we support 3 concerts during that series. This year we had to do them all in one weekend because of the problems from COVID earlier in the year. We utilize our financing to provide funds to help support that concert series. The third program I want to mention is the Tour of the Moon bike event. I'm sure most of you know about the Tour of the Moon as well. It's a big deal. There are hundreds, if not more, of bikers from out of the area who come into the area for that event. We help to support that event by staffing the aid stations. We provide funding for the food and for the hydration for those bikers. And the final thing I want to mention is that we provided funding from our sister arm, the Riverfront Foundation, several years ago to Fruita to help Fruita build the Riverfront Trail out to Loma. Once that section was completed, there was some of the funding which had been provided was left over. Fruita came to us and asked if they could keep the remainder of that funding to help them with a new project that will be coming up that's on Highway 340 and Raptor Road. I was just talking with Mr. Michael Bennett earlier, and he may want to contribute some information on that. I think you know quite a bit more about it than I do.
Sure, we were pleased that the One Riverfront or the foundation was willing to allow the city to maintain those funds so that we could look at designing a better connection across 340. So, you know, we still have that gap, although we have the Riverfront Trail on both sides, but figuring out the best way to connect. And there's 2 options for that. And so we have those funds with their permission to continue looking at that. Those were the top priorities in the Frost plan, the Parks, Health, Recreation, Open Space and Trails Master Plan for trail connections. And so we are looking at those funds being utilized in next year's budget to look into design of the appropriate connection. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'm open for any questions if you have them.
Thanks, Fred. Does anybody have any questions? All right, well, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. And our next presentation is for Grand Valley Pets Alive. We got Sue Tuffin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to change this up a little bit because now I'm going to talk about 4-legged things that we need funding for instead of some of the wonderful presentations that you've had. Grand Valley Pets Alive is an organization that serves the majority of the whole Grand Valley. And our mission is to assist in reducing the number of homeless cats and dogs in the county. And I think all of you know that that's a significant problem. I'm sure you get complaints. I bet people even stop you and say, you know, what can we do about those cats that are running everywhere in our neighborhood? Well, to share with you, we have been working very diligently for many years to reduce the number of unwanted animals in the county. And we just recently, over about the last 5 years, really begun to focus on trying to help Fruita out with their problem with feral cats in particular. Dogs seem to have other resources, cats not so much. So we focus on them in this area. We will, however, assist in spaying and neutering a dog if we get a request to do so. But I would share with you that we work very closely with Stacy at Animal Control. She's often calling me personally and saying, you know, Sue, can you go and help assist this elderly person who's has all these cats that have been dumped on them or that they have been trying to feed and take care of. So I work very closely with her. There's about 3 of us in this end of the valley that do the trapping. And we focused on when we get calls, it may be in a neighborhood like a trailer park, for example. I've been focusing on a couple of your trailer parks. That may take me several years because unfortunately when people leave, they often leave behind their animals. And invariably it's a cat and the cat has kittens and the kittens have kittens and it just goes on and on. I personally took 23 cats out of a trailer park here in Fruita over the last 2 years. We've had another wonderful woman who's involved with our organization who focused on an abandoned house that was just right down here on Aspen, where there was a colony of cats that she herself took care of and neutered and spayed 24 of them, which is a significant number. I would share with you that this last year, for the total of numbers of animals that we spayed and neutered countywide was 534, which to us was amazing because it was COVID and the veterinarians closed down on us. And that's why we had such a demand. We just had cats everywhere. And so countywide, we managed to have a record year in spite of closures of veterinarian office, which we still haven't figured that out, but we did manage in some instances when we had one of our veterinarians have to have hand surgery. We were transporting animals to Rifle to be spayed and neutered at their animal control. So there's a kind of a whole group of individuals that work together very closely to try to address this issue. Now, this last year here in Fruita, of the 534 total that we did in the county, 108 of them were here in Fruita. Well, that's a drop in the bucket. We know that. But it's 108 cats that aren't going to multiply and have their offspring multiply. So we're hoping this year that number's even larger. The way it's going, I believe it is. I personally, this year so far, I won't speak for my other trappers, but personally so far this year, we're looking at about 34 for me. And I have right now, I'm focusing on another trailer park, so I'm sure there'll be more than that. But we're here to say that, you know, our mission and focus is trying to assist communities in having healthier environments to live in. It's not a very pleasant place sometimes to see sick and injured animals around you, and we'd like to be able to continue to do what we do. It's completely volunteer. There's no paid staff. We are funded through grants or donations, and it costs us roughly $60 to $65 per animal to get them taken care of. So the money that you all would be, that we've asked for, that would fund, another 35 to 40 spays and neuters. And for us, that's a lot. And we appreciate your willingness to let us present. We're a little bit, I think, a little bit off the line on what you normally fund. So we were pleased to know that we would have the opportunity to come forward and do this. I'd be really glad to answer any kinds of questions. We don't have a big presentation, but I do have some brochures that I'd just like to, there's no flyer. Because who knows, you may know someone. And we would love to be the entity that could do that for you. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Sue. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to say, I live in the Reed Park area and there was an enormous cat colony there. And just a couple days ago, some neighbors were talking to me about, we haven't seen as many cats. What's going on? I said, and I didn't know, I knew something was happening, but I didn't know. So thank you on behalf of my neighbors and constituents. So.
Well, thank you. That's good feedback. We have been doing our very best in targeting, and you never know if you're really making the impact unless we hear that you have some positive results.
Yeah.
We're not going to guarantee that that number's not going to climb.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting place, but yeah.
That's the one. We have to keep trying, all of us do. So we appreciate your willingness to listen to us, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, that concludes our presentations. We're going to move into public participation. So this section is set aside for the city council to listen to comments by the public regarding items that do not otherwise appear on this agenda. Generally, the city council will not discuss the issue and will not take an official action under this section. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak on something not on the agenda, now would be the time. All right, if you'd please step up to the microphone. We'd ask you to limit your comment to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Stacy Langston. My address is 353 North Colson. I live across the street from the hospital and right next door to the 2 lots that make up the corner of Otley and Colson, and have been, as of the last over a year, the parking and working area for the construction that's been going on at the hospital. So, and amazingly, they do a lot of work at some very odd hours. But that seems to be wrapping up. And you know what, before I go any farther, I really wanted to take a moment and say thank you to everyone that's here. First of all, board meetings are generally not very fun, but this has been one of the most pleasant meetings I've ever attended. Thank you so much to everybody who presented. I love this town. It is a beautiful place to live. And it is in large part because of all of the time that you give, the planning that has gone into this town, the dedicated community members. It just, Fruita has a pulse about it that is just so beautiful. And I work at Munchies, so I get to see all the wonderful different people that make up this community or come into this community at different times for different reasons. And it's very beautiful. So thank you all for everything you do. Okay, and then the thing that I am just want to address some concerns and make sure that that corner property is held to the standards that have made this community so beautiful. I'm not sure what's going on. I would love it if I could get a name or have a meeting with anybody that might be able to say what the plans are for that area. But it's a beautiful lot. There's some beautiful trees. I've gotten some wonderful information about Colorado Land Trust. I mean, like, I think that our properties back up to that wash. I'd love to talk to them about that. But I just want to see that, I want to know that the hospital is going to maintain that property and to keep it beautiful. I've heard that there was going to be gravel parking there. That's concerning, and I really don't think that meets my understanding of our codes. And then I also just want to see that it stays beautiful. I was looking through the land use code that was for second reading tonight, or I haven't been keeping up too intensely, but there's a lot of work in there. There's a lot of effort that everybody's gone to make sure that this is a beautiful area. So anyway, if I could maybe speak with someone or get some information, or just become a part of the process to ensure that our community stays beautiful in that little corner, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else that would like to make comment tonight? And if you want to talk with our city manager, he'd give you some information on what you'd need. Or Dan.
That's Dan with the red hair.
Walking away.
You upset him so much, he's leaving, so.
I'm so angry.
All right, is there anybody else that'd like to speak on something not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, we're going to close public participation and bring it back, go on to our consent agenda. So these are items where all conditions or requirements have been agreed to or met prior to the time they come before the council for final action. These items will be approved by a single motion of the council. So with that, I'm going to open up the consent agenda to a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak on something on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, I'll bring it back to council. Are there any questions, comments, or do we have a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda as stated, as written, as presented in our packet, whatever the prepositional phrase is that I need.
Second.
Okay, thanks.
Counselor Bremen,
Yes.
Counselor Harvey,
Yes.
Counselor Lenhart,
yes,
Counselor O'Brien,
Yes.
Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, with that, we're going to move into our public hearings. We've got 2 legislative hearings tonight. So our first one is ordinance 2021-22, a second reading. A request to approve an ordinance amending Title II of the Fruita Municipal Code. So we've got, who's presenting?
Hi, I'm Jessica Garrow.
All right.
I'm with Design Workshop
All right, Jessica.
and very excited to be with you tonight.
Because it means you're done.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I will say it's a little bittersweet. It's been really a wonderful time working with the city and with the staff. So, but we're here and almost done, which is great. Okay, great. So again, Jessica Garrow, I'm with Design Workshop and have been working with Dan and his team for about 18 months since March of 2020 to update the land use code to implement the comprehensive plan. And so this is our final presentation and we're excited to be with you tonight. See if it'll. There we go. Great. So this project, as I mentioned, is really focused on implementing the comprehensive plan. The key project goals are on the screen. We really focused on implementing best practices within the land use code, focused on what are those goal statements within the comprehensive plan, wanted to create some clarity and standardization into your code and into the processes, and really focus on legibility, readability, usability, so that anyone can pick up the code while it's a big, dense document, can pick up the code and understand what they need to do or what their neighborhood might be going through and how to go through a review process. So tonight we are here at the adoption phase. So to get here, we have gone through an analysis of your code, gone through best practices, worked on kind of policy memo, worked with a working group. There were some major code amendments that were adopted in March, and tonight is kind of the culmination of all of that work. So the language that is in your packet, it's really divided into 3 different categories. The first is language that's being recodified. So these are the sections that you adopted in March. What has happened here is there's some renumbering that has gone on to make sure that the code again kind of meets more modern standards. But there's no substantive changes to these sections. The second are areas where we have new language, and this is where we'll really focus the presentation tonight. This is everything from Title II powers and duties to standard review procedures within the land use code. And while you have 2 items on your agenda, an ordinance amending Title II and an ordinance rescinding and readopting Title 17, we're talking about this as a package because they really do go together. So the third category are things that have been reformatted within Title 17. So these are no substantive changes here. It's just making sure that the references work and that all of the numbering is consistent. So legal notice has been provided for the amendments that are before you this evening. So we wanted to just take a moment before we get into some of the guts of the code to talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan, because that really is why we are here. So the code really does implement many of the statements that are located in the comprehensive plan, and it implements the key themes that you see on the screen through updates to zoning allowances, looking at review criteria, and creating, again, that clarity and process. Really importantly, the comprehensive plan identifies 13 community values, and the code does help implement all of these. I would say these 4 are really the key ones that are included in the code amendment package tonight. They are amendments that promote connectivity, they support quality design, create clarity in the annexation process, and support housing diversity. The other thing I would add here is that tonight's not the end of implementing the comprehensive plan. It's just one piece of implementing the comprehensive plan. And you should continue to move forward and create new policies, new programs, kind of funding of different things that really do kind of focus your priorities to make sure that they're implementing the comprehensive plan. We know that you're looking at housing quite a bit, and that's something that Design Workshop has contributed to, and you'll see some of that in the code amendments, but there's a lot more that can be done. And I think your comprehensive plan really does sort of set that stage for you to move forward, looking at things like redevelopment authorities, for instance. How does that fit within Fruita? There's an example in Grand Junction, small towns. Canyon City is looking at one right now. The town of Erie has one. That's a way that you could kind of move forward on some of these goals, not related to the land use code, but it's something that we've been in conversation with Dan about as maybe some potential kind of future work. The other piece, and again, it's not in this code amendment package, but kind of looking at your impact fees, not changing those in anything tonight, but when do you collect those? And can you kind of change something through an administrative process, an administrative change to really support some of your goals around housing and connectivity? So I just leave that here as this is not the end. This is maybe the beginning of you kind of continuing to move forward and supporting many of the goals and items in the comprehensive plan. So refocusing back to the item at hand, these code amendments, they really focus on the land use and growth chapter of the comprehensive plan, supporting the idea that Fruita is a distinct city within the Grand Valley, supporting your small town character. You have agricultural lands around a thriving downtown and connected neighborhoods, and providing that diversity in housing. There are 7 goals within that chapter of the comprehensive plan, and I'm not going to read all of these, but the amendments before you go really a long way in supporting all of these goals. All right, so now we will dive into the proposed changes. You'll notice on all of these slides, we've called out the packet page number so that if you need to follow along and have a specific question about one of these sections, you know where in the packet to go. So we are going to start with updates to Title II. This is a change that is not particularly substantive, but your current code includes kind of powers and duties for the Historic Preservation Board in Title 17. All of the other boards are in Title 2. We're combining that so that you only have to go to one place and there's consistency within the entire municipal government. Title 2 is where you go to understand boards and commissions and their powers and duties. We've also focused on kind of aligning things with state law. So just making sure that it's very clear what does the Board of Adjustment do versus the Planning Commission. So again, not really substantive changes, but creating a little bit of clarity and consistency between what the role of the different boards and commissions are. So the second major change, this is new language related to review processes. And this is included in the standard review procedures section. And this is a new addition to the code. And what it has done is we've pulled together a number of different sections that talk about how do you go through the land use process? What is a project that requires an administrative review versus something that is going to go all the way to city council? So we've added some additional charts to the code to help outline that. And it really does create clarity. When you pick up the code, you understand what is the path before me in order to get approval for my project. The other important piece of this particular code section is the addition of the neighborhood meeting. So these are required for some projects. You'll see here on the chart, anything with an M means it's a mandatory neighborhood meeting. That provides the community an opportunity to talk with an applicant prior to the public hearing process. So it really does kind of open that up to be a little bit more inclusive and open for the community. The code outlines specific kind of metrics that need to be met. So that neighborhood meeting has to happen before the public hearing. They need to provide a summary to staff so that it's included in the council packet or the planning commission packet so that everyone understands what was discussed at that meeting. And this is really a great best practice throughout the country. So this outlines the review process. So again, we've broken the review process into very clear pieces. So you start with your pre-application meeting, submit your application, go through your determination of completeness, neighborhood meeting, public notice, and then the review and decision. The next section that we wanted to review is annexation. And this chapter has been updated really to clarify the role of the Planning Commission, because that is not very clear in your current code. So they are a recommending body to City Council on any annexation. And it also has language just to ensure that we're being consistent with state law. We've reformatted this a little bit and updated some of the review criteria. The comprehensive plan has some very specific statements about annexation. And so we've tied that review criteria to what is said in the comprehensive plan, as well as making sure that there's adequate infrastructure to serve a development within that area. The next section is PUD, planned unit development. I would say this is maybe one of the meatier sections and some of the meatier changes within the code. We have updated kind of review authority and standards here. What we've also done is coordinated all of the steps in a PUD and a subdivision. Right now, one has a concept plan, the other has a sketch plan. Those are the same thing. So now we have aligned that language and there's an optional concept plan for both PUD and for subdivision. That is held in a work session with the Planning Commission and with City Council and is an optional step. So it's an opportunity for City Council to provide some feedback to an applicant and to hear kind of what their idea is for their PUD. Then if the applicant decides to move forward, they go into their preliminary PUD process. And that is kind of a binding, it's a public hearing process. First with the Planning Commission as a recommending body, final decision is at City Council, just as it is today. And then once that is approved, that's where the substantive conversation is happening. And you've decided on maybe density, you've decided on, is there any additional height or floor area, that type of thing. For final PUD, that's administrative because you've dealt with all of those issues at preliminary. Final is making sure that they're meeting those requirements, any of the conditions that you set at preliminary. And that is really a best practice. It helps kind of consolidate that overall development timeframe, and you'll get kind of more housing, for instance, on the market a little bit quicker because you're not required to go through multiple public hearings at each step. We've also updated, again, some of the review criteria, tying it back to some of the statements within the comprehensive plan. The subdivision, you might recall we talked a little bit in detail when we had a work session this summer about what should the threshold for subdivision be. So in the amendments that are before you, a minor subdivision is the same as it is today. That threshold is 10 units. So 10 units and less is a minor subdivision. Anything above that is considered a major subdivision and would go through that full public hearing process. So again, optional concept plan, required preliminary, and then required final. And just like PUD, that final is something that's administrative, again, because those major issues would have been addressed and finalized as part of that preliminary review. Next section is on variances and administrative modifications. This is a new chapter. And making sure that, again, kind of one place to go if you want to have any kind of change to your development, this is where you go. So variances, that language, again, very much the same as it is today. You have to show that there's a hardship, and that's reviewed by the Board of Adjustment. The new piece to this code is allowing some small scale administrative modifications. This is used to address things that might come up during a permitting process or during the construction process to address issues related to energy efficiency and building code compliance. That's it. It's not because I feel like it, because I think this would be a better design. That is not what this is for. This is really about something that you're finding in the field or as part of that permit process. It links kind of the review criteria back to adopted building codes. So it, again, kind of a best practice so that there's a little bit of flexibility that the community development director can exercise to make sure that buildings are meeting safety requirements and energy requirements. Importantly, if you're in the land use review process, you don't get to ask for this administrative modification. You should be going through your PUD process and having that kind of discussed at city council. So there is a very kind of clear language in the code to say this is for something that you see related to the construction. Almost done. The next section is historic preservation. This is really just a general reorganization of the chapter. We've added some additional purpose statements to talk about the balance between preservation and kind of economic realities of property ownership. We've added some new definitions that relate to the Secretary of Interior standards. Again, just a general best practice within the country. We have clarified the review process, but there's no changes that have been made to the review process. So again, that's just part of that aligning and making sure that things are a little bit clearer. And then the final changes are related to definitions. So we have consolidated some definitions that mean the same thing. So for instance, you've got a definition right now for nursery and for greenhouse. Those are very similar things. And so we've consolidated that. We've provided links to similar definitions that maybe are a little bit different. So hotel, motel, lodge, as an example, they kind of refer back to one another. And then we have some new definitions or updated definitions. So you saw this in the work session this summer, but some changes to the definition of affordable housing unit. We've removed sketch plan and are just using concept plan. And then clarifying duplex, this is kind of a minor change, but allowing a duplex to be a side-by-side configuration or an over-under configuration. And then just, again, some clarifications on floor area. Mentioned the reformatted chapters, those really just reformatted, so there's nothing substantive to review here. And so that leads us to, these are the suggested motions recommended by staff and design workshop. Again, because this is two titles that you would be amending, it's two separate actions, but the recommendation is to approve Title II and Title 17 amendments. Happy to answer any questions following public comment.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, with that, we're going to open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak on one of these two items? All right, hearing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Does anybody have any questions?
I do, and maybe I just didn't notice it in planning commission, but on the chart where it says like who the decision-making body is and what's mandatory and optional, it said that the planning commission was a decision-making body for a conditional use permit. Did I just miss that last time? I was thinking that was city council.
No, I think that was in there last time.
Okay.
As planning commission as the decision-making body.
Okay, and then, so what was the one, there was one at planning commission that you guys hadn't updated the chart. Did
right
that
of way.
get fixed?
Yeah, that got fixed. So there was some inconsistency in some of the other code sections related to right-of-way vacations, and that's been clarified that everything is, that's done administratively.
Thank you.
And vested rights is going to council. Right.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Matthew?
Yeah, question on the allowed administrative adjustments, just for my clarification. So let's say on rear setbacks, it's 10%. So that is, I mean, I'm trying to understand, is that an arbitrary allotment or allowance in terms of administrative adjustment can say yes or no to that? And then if they say no, does that come to council at that point?
It would go to the Board of Adjustment. They essentially, there's maybe actually two paths for this. The first is as an appeal to the administrative decision that would go through the appeals chapter and would go to council, I think. I'll double check that. The second is to say, well, now we want to request our hardship variance instead, or we need more than 10%, so you have to go through the hardship variance, and that would go to BOA.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Dan. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Kyle?
For the Historic Preservation Board, I know I brought it up last meeting, it's kind of the ninth inning, but they wanted to increase the membership from a minimum of 5 to not more than 9, rather than not more than 7. And I don't know, I mean, I kind of threw it out there at the last meeting and it seemed like council was okay with that, but is this an appropriate time to have that changed in the section?
Yeah, I would say you can adjust that in the motion. I don't know if Dan or Mike have comments on that, but that's an easy number to fix.
Is this about, I mean, last time it kind of seemed like there was a little bit of confusion as to whether this
Yeah,
is a good
it's
time or if
it's not in the charter, so it is by, I mean, this is where that is created. I'm just trying to remember if it was in the bylaws or if it's in the ordinance.
Looks like it's in chapter, well, it's
I believe this would be the right.
yeah, it's in 243.010B is where I mean, it's in this section, so I don't know.
We don't have a problem with that change. I think the only thing that I would mention is that, you know, when we were having a lot of interest in planning commission, we decided to explore the idea of just having alternates, you know, to be able to serve. And I think that same policy could be in alignment with the Historic Preservation Board. But if there's a lot of interest.
I think their concern is there is some interest recently after the history fair. But the point being that they're kind of looking for more people to get involved and volunteer so they can coordinate more outreach and things like that.
I think there is a distinction between planning and historic preservation. Because planning is more, I'd say, more recommending to council, where historic preservation, I think, is doing a little more community involvement. I would say would probably be the right word for that. So I think that's where I like the alternates for planning. I think.
Well, and we were trying to build in like a succession plan, whereas it sounds like you're trying to expand your capacity. So it makes sense to do it your way.
That's,
I mean, so I don't know what the rest of council feels, if you're good with up to 9, because you were saying up to 9.
yeah, so I mean, the minimum would still be 5. just that they'll be able to add.
And keeping the quorum the same if you number, okay.
Dan, did you want to talk to the mic so that way we got it on record?
Well, at the planning commission meetings, we didn't want to just have like 4, planning commission members, like we wanted to be representative, and have a fully seated planning commission, which is part of the reason for the alternates. So a little different, from sort of the distinction standpoint, if you're just trying to grow kind of capacity and interest.
Sounds like everybody's good with that.
That's all I have.
We just need to add that to the motion, correct?
You have to make the motion, that means.
Okay.
You just got volunteered.
I'm working on some language for you. so-
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions for Jessica or Dan? So that one's in which ordinance? 20.
Ordinance 22.
Do we need to do them?
Yeah.
Looks like Ken's ready to make a motion.
That would be the adjusted motion.
Somebody else is gonna have to read it because my eyes aren't that good.
I'm having a hard time.
Do you want me to make it
I'll
bigger?
move that we adopt ordinance 2021-22, a request to approve an ordinance amending Title II of the Fruita Municipal Code concerning powers and duties of the Community Development Department, Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustments, and the Historic Preservation Board, adjusting the language in section 2.43.010B to allow no more than 9 members.
I second.
Counselor Buck,
Yes.
Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor O'Brien,
Yes.
Counselor Harvey,
Yes.
Counselor Bremen,
Yes.
Counselor Lenhart.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Right, and then do we have a motion on ordinance 2021-21?
Yes, I move to adopt ordinance 2021, a request to 21, sorry. A request to approve an ordinance repealing and reenacting Title 17, the Fruita Land Use Code of the Fruita Municipal Code as amended.
Second.
Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor O'Brien,
Yes.
Counselor Lenhart,
Yes.
Counselor Bremen,
Yes.
Counselor Harvey,
Yes.
Counselor Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Good to
Congratulations.
See you in person, I guess.
No, it's nice to finally be here.
A lot of work.
A lot of work.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move into our administrative agenda. We've got some budget presentations. Our first one is Public Works Department presentation. We got Kimberly Bullen, our Public Works Director here. Looks like you get to do a couple. You're gonna be working on the Public Works and then we're moving into the Enterprise Fund presentation. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Kimberly Bullen with Public Works Department. Appreciate the time to come and share with you our 2022 budget presentation. I've got the bar has been set high because Dan had a 5-minute presentation the last time, so we'll try to make it fairly quick for you guys tonight. So what you're looking at now is the current organization of the Public Works Department. We currently have 25 full-time employees and 3 seasonals. What's important about this slide is that in the next year to 3 years, we have a quarter of our department that will be eligible for retirement. So we're going to be spending some time developing succession plans and doing some professional development. So you'll see some of that reflected in our budget requests. As you know, Public Works is spread across a couple of different funds. For the general fund, it includes road maintenance, traffic safety, building maintenance, and mountain water. The accomplishments for 2021, we completed 114 patches. completed grading and mag chloride on several of the large roads that we have in Snooks Bottom Road parking lot, Greenway Drive, and the pond entrance. For the 2021 PACER evaluation, we reported an average score of 7.1. This has changed a little bit from previous years in that we removed the CDOT roadway because we don't have any maintenance responsibilities on those roads. We are noticing some of the roads, we're seeing a higher percentage of roads that are falling in the 4.0 score of the PACER, which means they're in that failing category and need to have some work done on them. We used 23 pallets of crack fill material in the spring, and we anticipated an additional 10 for the fall, as long as the road, as long as the weather holds out for us. And then the pictures, yeah, you can see the pictures. Crews rebuilt the culvert at Snooks Bottom after somebody kind of backed in on the road, on the wood structure there and damaged that. So I've got the goals listed in the presentation, but I'm not going to cover those because those will be in the budget document. What I want to focus on is more of our the budget highlights and go over that with all of you. So in direct response to the community survey and what the community priorities were, we recognized that the street condition of the streets was an important priority for the community. So in response to that, we have requested an additional FTE as a maintenance worker 1. We've requested $100,000 to focus on chip sealing and patching for some of the residential roads, bringing the condition of the roads up and improving that PACER score. We are also adding, requesting to add $70,000 to our sidewalk replacement program. So currently we are budgeting $30,000 for sidewalks. The map to the right is actually a sidewalk condition improvement map that was done, or an inventory of the city done by the engineering department, that really shows some of the segments of poor sidewalk conditions. We've also experienced a significant amount of heaving of our sidewalks this summer, as well as just some deteriorating conditions. So we feel like we really need to throw some additional funds at that. We'll continue the 80-20 cost share program. So that's still going to be an important program for the city to share in those costs with the landowner. We're requesting 2 replacement vehicles in our capital equipment replacement fund. One is a dump truck, and then the other one is a 4x4 truck with a dump bed. We're hoping to move that into more of a motor pool type vehicle that will be shared across other departments for use. In 2021, we put out the bid for street striping. Due to the freeze in Texas, there became a paint shortage, which meant the cost for striping would be increased, and we saw that. It was twice the cost of what we had budgeted for. So we did not street stripe the streets this year, and we hope to then stripe all the streets next year. And so we're doubling that budget item. And then we're requesting some wireless headsets for the streets division. I believe it was last year that we were approved for headsets for the collections crew, and we have found those to be invaluable with the loud noise and traffic and things that people are working in. It just gives the crew a chance to be able to communicate and clearly and understand and share information. We had a number of requests for some larger equipment, and with some guidance from our finance director and city manager, we have decided to hold off on purchasing those items, and it really is probably the best decision because we're going to increase our rental equipment line item and actually go out and just rent that equipment. That saves the city in having to find replacement costs when the equipment's due for replacement. So we'll be monitoring that as well. From a building maintenance standpoint, obviously during COVID-19, the building maintenance staff continued to clean and disinfect throughout the city facilities. I would say this is a pretty monumental task considering that we only have 3 people in that division. So they've worked really hard to keep everybody safe. We have developed a draft custodial maintenance schedule of duties, and we'll continue to refine that so that we've got a routine of maintenance for all of our facilities. We're completing a space programming analysis for Civic Center in hopes that we can generate a little bit more office space, workspace for the folks in the administration section of this building. They're kind of sitting on top of each other. And then we've also worked with FWorks to increase the capacity for additional workspace that they've had a very big need in terms of businesses that want to come in and rent office space in FWorks. Budget highlights. So this will be a recurring theme in some of the budget highlights, in that we're starting to see, and I wish we were immune to some of the national conversation, but We will continue to see increase in costs for materials and supplies, as well as we're seeing the effect of the supply chain issue. So for building maintenance, we're going to increase our service contracts for the elevator maintenance. And then we've got some building maintenance expenses increasing because we've got some aging facilities that really need to have some attention paid to them. Mountain water accomplishments. Obviously, we all know the dry conditions and the low water that we experienced this year and we've been experiencing. The amount of water available from the hay press diversion was minimal, so we continued to provide water to the Glade Park water users out of the reservoirs. Staff continued to maintain the dam slopes and spillways for all of the reservoirs and Enoch Reservoir. And we recorded the reservoir heights and monitored the delivery as required by the Colorado Division of Water Resources. And then Enoch Lake site continues to be operated on a minimal level, but we are starting to see some deficiencies in the restroom and the facilities that are up there. The budget highlights for Mountain Water, we want to, so again, because of constraints on supplies and the cost, we did not repair 1,000 feet of pipeline this year, which we were on schedule for 1,000 feet for the next 5 years. What we're hoping is that we'll do 2,000 this year, so we've doubled the budget for this year. And hopefully we'll get a better pricing by adding that quantity. Reservoir maintenance expenses are we increased because we've got some woody material that we have to remove from the dams. That's done every few years. We get trees and things that start to grow up that we need to get rid of. And then we're requesting to replace 2 of the 5 meters that we use to record the flows and the reporting to the state. We've got the 5 meters, so we hope to replace 2 next year, 2 the following year, and the final one in 2024. I'll jump into the enterprise funds. Irrigation and the sewer fund both make up the enterprise funds, which are really considered our business funds for the city. Irrigation accomplishments, we completed the extension of the irrigation distribution in Ash Street. We've evaluated and adjusted the flush valves for correct operation, and then we maintain the head gate system for the irrigation system. That was a monumental task this year, again, because of the low flows and the hot temperatures. We saw a significant amount of moss that was growing in the canals and clogging the head gates. And we actually had an employee come up with basically a water wheel system that we attached to the head gates, and it was powered by the water, as you would see in an old water wheel, and it scrubbed the head gate, and it worked to some degree, but we still had to have crews out there almost on a daily basis, making sure those head gates were clean. Our budget highlights for irrigation will be we'll replace the 6-inch water meter, and then we've got a project that we'd like to pipe a remaining section on the paperweight irrigation system that's still considered an open ditch. It's becoming a maintenance issue that the weeds are getting pretty significant. Nobody's responsible or taking the responsibility to clean out trash, and so we're having some issues there. The sewer fund collections, our accomplishments there, we installed approximately 2,600 feet of sewer line, both in the Ash Street project, the Aspen Avenue project, and the Maple Street project. We completed CCTV inspection on both the Ash and Maple Street projects and a number of the subdivisions that have been installing the infrastructure. So estimated over 100 lines that we've cameraed, both sewer and stormwater. We're currently finalizing the report with a preferred alternative to deal with the H2s Mitigation project. That's been an issue that we've been dealing with for a number of years here in the city, and we believe we've come up with a good alternative to deal with that. And then we're also finalizing the best management practices to manage our grease, fats, and oils that are collecting in our collection system, which has been a problem and will continue to be a problem for our infrastructure if we don't start to deal with that. And then, as you all know, through your approval, we've replaced 3 of the variable frequency drives at the I-70 lift station that experienced some failure over the summer. Budget highlights for sewers that will transfer $300,000 to capital projects to help continue with the Maple Street project. We're requesting an air-powered valve actuator. We currently have over 520 valves in the city's system. And so this equipment will help us to develop an exercise program. So we're maintaining those valves and making sure that they're working properly. And then we've also requested some GPS locating equipment. 2018, the laws changed requiring us to locate better the underground infrastructure and some of the service lines that tie directly to the home. So we were experiencing a significant amount of locate requests over the summer. I believe we were averaging somewhere around roughly 200 locates a month. So that was a pretty big burden for staff as well. From the sewer fund treatment, we had no permit violations and we passed all of our discharge monitoring reporting requirements. We continue to participate in the voluntary incentive program, which as we volunteer to make reductions of our nutrients, we're getting credit in terms of our compliance schedule. So we will continue those efforts. We've completed the infiltration and inflow, also known as an I&I plan, the pollutant source identification study and discharge temperature report. These are things required through the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. We're currently updating our needs assessment, which is really our 10-year plan for improvements to the wastewater treatment facility. And so we're updating our current costs on that. That obviously will change with the current environment that we're in. And we're completing a 30% design of our aeration system, getting ready for when we have to turn on the second ditch so that we can make sure we're able to provide maintenance on the aeration system. And then we've also contracted with the commercial industrial electrician to do some of our preventative maintenance on our main switchgear at the wastewater treatment plant. Budget highlights, again, broken record, our repair and maintenance budget is going to increase due to inflation in the cost of materials and supply chain issues. We've seen a significant amount of increase in our utility costs, primarily again because of the freeze in Texas. There's been a pass-through cost through our utility providers that we've had to pay. And then we've got a number of capital projects planned for wastewater treatment facility that include the H2s project and the Granular Sludge Vortex project. So as I mentioned, the H2s project, it's been a problem for us for a few years that we need to deal with. We generate a significant amount of H2s gas in our system, which has a corrosive impact to our infrastructure. And so we've worked with an engineering firm. We've come up with what we call a building block recommendation where we will vent the system and then treat the odor at the wastewater reclamation facility. If needed, we could come back and then add a chemical feed, sodium hydroxide, to help with additional impacts that we might need to mitigate. That project is estimated to be around $800,000. That doesn't necessarily include the manhole rehabilitation. There are approximately 17 manholes on that portion of the line. We believe that there are several that are, if not all, that are in pretty significant shape for repair and replacement. So we'll be looking at that. We are anticipating using some of the ARPA funds. That was one of the criteria in ARPA funds that the money could be used for was sewer and water systems. So we think it's a good use of those funds. And we'll be exploring a potential DOLA grant to help offset some of those costs as well. The other project is the Granular Sludge Vortex project. This is an innovative pilot project that we believe will improve our secondary treatment at the facility. And we think it will offer a number of benefits to the plant, primarily energy savings. And it could allow us to have higher capacity of that single ditch, therefore deferring the time that we would have to turn on a second ditch, which adds utility costs, personnel costs. So we think that that has a good benefit. We've seen benefit for it will reduce the filamentous bacteria interruptions that we typically see out at our plant from time to time. And it has a potential for helping us improve our biological removal performance. That is estimated about $250. We're still looking at the costs on that, but we think it should be somewhere close to that number. And then last but not least is our fleet fund. Our accomplishments for the fleet division is that we maintain approximately 130 pieces of equipment and a number of small engines. We continue to make improvements to our capital equipment replacement fund using some metrics, and we're going to continue to refine that process. And then we entered into a partnership with Western Colorado Community College to assist us with our AESE testing, which is required for our mechanics. And so they've been helping us with that, and we'll continue that into 2022. Budget highlights, again, proposed budget increase of 17%, primarily due to parts and fuel prices. And then we've requested replacement of a diagnostic tool. In 2021, we were We budgeted for a software upgrade of our current diagnostic tool, and since that time, they are no longer supporting that equipment and no longer software upgrades are available. So we're looking to just purchase a brand new diagnostic tool. And that is it.
All right, thank you. That wasn't quite 5 minutes, but that's all right.
I tried.
Does anybody have any questions for Kimberly?
How likely are you going to get a dump truck and another truck this year? Shortages.
Yeah, I think it could be a challenge, just knowing where vehicles sit and in terms of that, but Dave will be on it if we get the approval.
All right, well, thank you. All right, with that, we're going to move into discussion of possible action concerning participation in the Colorado opioid settlement. Margaret, you're up.
So the state of Colorado, as well as some local government entities within the state, have pursued litigation against some of the pharmaceutical companies for opioid endemic. In Colorado, there's recently been a settlement of that litigation, and the state expects to receive up to $400 million in settlement funds over a period of 8 to 18 years. And those settlement funds are distributed to various regions in the state, including Mesa County, as well as certain municipalities. So what this item really is about is whether or not the city wants to participate in that settlement. There's an allocation of the funds that could come to Mesa County and the municipalities within Mesa County. Currently, Chief Krause has been working with a group within Mesa County to discuss potential use of those funds. As I understand it from the settlement, the more municipalities, the more entities that participate in that settlement, the higher the settlement would be. And there's several different tiers of funding for that settlement. So the more they get 95% of the participating local government or local governments to participate, it reaches that higher level of funding. So this involves a number of different agreements. They have an MOU that lays out the allocation of funds. Then if we had any suits against the pharmaceutical companies individually, we would have to release our claim to those suits. And then there's an escrow agreement that shares that our legal claims, if we had any against these pharmaceutical companies, would only be released if 95% participation. The documents are fairly lengthy. And you can kind of see there on the second page of the cover sheet, estimated distribution of funds is $400 million, with Mesa County receiving about 11.5 million, the Mesa County region receiving 11.5 million. Allocated 7 million, Fruita 193,000. We can all work together to figure out how those funds are distributed. If it all goes to the region and we distribute it from the regional share, or if individual entities receive funding. But the first step is to really just to get into the settlement process and sign the MOUs and waivers. Any questions? There was just one question I had. They still haven't received an answer on about the attorney fees. But as I see in the agreement, the attorney fees would be paid from the local governments through a backstop fund. The legal firms that want to be reimbursed through that would have to apply to that backstop fund. There's a limit to how much can be paid in attorney fees. What I wasn't really clear on is if it was a cumulative amount of 8.7% payable by the county region and 4.35% by the city region, or if it was an accident of one of those. So I haven't received a response on that, but at the most, our share would be 4% of what we receive. Questions? Like
Kind of interesting reading, actually.
yeah.
I'm assuming we're getting into this because the county asked people to jump in on board on that.
Well, really, the state is the impetus because it's kind of a statewide settlement. the county has been involved in kind of discussing this regional council of how they would allocate funds and what the funds would be used for. And Chief Kraus has been involved on that, but I think it's more of a state impetus for the settlement.
Yeah, Chief Kraus is the representative for the city of Fruita on the board, the Mesa County Board, on how to allocate the funds, as most of them are going back into mental health or services in that arena.
And there are specific purposes the funds can be used for, as spelled out in the agreements that council would.
But to your question, Mesa County Board of Commissioners has requested that all of the communities approve this prior to, I can't remember, very early in November. So we put it on this agenda after receiving it so that they can process the entire claim for the county and all the municipalities within it.
Anybody have any questions, concerns on this? We have a motion.
Figure out what the motion is.
Page 2 or 3.
I move that we authorize the mayor to sign and execute the following documents related to the city of Fruita's participation in the Colorado opioid settlement. Do I need to list those off as well? Or as detailed in the packet, council packet?
Second that one.
Counselor Harvey,
Yes.
Counselor O'Brien,
Yes.
Counselor Lenhart,
Yes.
Counselor Bremen,
Yes.
Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Margaret. All right, we're going to move into the city manager's report.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of council. Just a few quick updates. As Kimberly Bolin, our Public Works Director, mentioned about best practices with grease, fats, and oils. We've recently concluded a study of best management practices for those and looking into adaptations or changes that we can make to our process so that we are making sure new builds, there are very clear requirements for new builds, and this is typically in the commercial arena, right? So there's education for residential households that will include in a City Link article of just those simple things you can do, wipe grease out of your pan with a towel before you clean, simple as that. But we're seeing dramatic amounts that is requiring a lot, hours of work per week. And this started during the last year and a half. So the amount of grease that accumulates in our system and causes quite a bit of an issue. So, and we were not alone in that. Many communities started experiencing that a little bit more, and it's interesting. But at the same time, we do know that over time, sometimes you have older businesses that through changes might not have served much food that created grease, but then add, to their menu or whatever it may be. So we are going to be sending out a letter to each, there's about 50 businesses that we assume in the city that actually would be creating some of the grease. And this is a very friendly letter, just trying to gather some information about where they're at. And then we will have face-to-face communication with each of those. We want to take this is not a hard-handed approach, but hey, let's work together on these best practices and get to a compliance period phase so that we can move forward like we are with new construction. So our public works department's working really well on that and creating a path for a number of steps. And I just wanted to give you a heads up on that so that if you hear about it, that's what we're starting, kind of gather information, then have in-person communication with these businesses so we can kind of get a better idea of and we have a number of businesses that are doing a lot of the best practices and trying to help everybody understand the right steps, but also what is required. So these aren't new requirements, but requirements that we have, but get into compliance over time. And we'll just keep you updated along those steps as we move forward. Also, something that I believe council brought up in the spring, Public Works, I asked them to look into it, and they've come up with a way to provide, and we think we're going to go ahead and try it in about in a few weeks, and pick a day and let the community know of a cleanup day where you could bring. So if you remember, the city of Grand Junction goes house to house and picks up, during the spring, various items that you're not able to put to the curb. Keeping in mind, they actually provide the service, they deliver the service of waste management, right? We have a contract for that. So to contract, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars to ask just for one, go around to do a special pickup day. So our staff, I thought, did a great job of coming up with to just try it out and test it out this fall and see if it's something we could build upon and do in future years for likely much less than $3,000, creating a Saturday or a particular day that people could drive through at the city shops, and with, where we let and bring items that they could drop off and at no cost to the residents, and try that out as a stepping stone towards, providing more service of getting rid of items that are difficult to get to, maybe to get to the landfill and pay those fees. So we're looking at trying that out and then seeing what we can learn and how we can build upon that. And then next week at the workshop, just a heads up of what we're planning for. An item that we have on that is to give an overview of the circulation plan. We have the full draft from all the work that's been worked on the multimodal circulation plan. So we want to have Sam Adkins and kind of go over some of the results of that, and so we can have some discussion before we get to a point of identifying the path forward for adopting that plan in the future, as well as where we're at with the Fremont Street design. And then we'll also have an item on there for just a budget check-in. So you've had a number of presentations, and if there's questions you have or things that we need to discuss before the remaining presentations, just so not a lot of us delivering information on the budget, but providing any discussion or questions that you may have as you've been hearing presentations and reviewing the budget document. So that's all the updates I have for tonight.
All right, with that, we're going to move into council reports and actions. Our first item is a discussion to reschedule our November 23rd workshop to November 30th. Anybody have any issues with doing that?
I might be, are we gonna go at 7 on the 30th?
Normally we're doing 6:30.
Okay, I am in a steering committee meeting for the district until 7, so I can just come late.
Or we can change it to 7. Now would be the time to, everybody good with 7? All right.
Still be
Yeah, I've got to
7:15.
bring donuts apparently to that one for Hanukkah.
All right. Who's going to make a motion?
He makes donuts? I move he makes donuts.
I'll buy them. You don't want me to make them.
November 23rd.
Second.
Counselor Buck? Counselor Lanhart?
Yes.
Mr. Cry?
Yes.
Counselor Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Counselor Freeman?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right. Now we'll move into council reports and actions. We'll start on this side. Lori.
Just that the CMU investiture ceremony is on Friday at 2 o'clock at the Robinson Center. A wide variety of speakers welcoming, the new president, and that'll go 2 to 4, and then there'll be some kind of fun stuff out on the plaza too. So if you wanted to get in and support the Mavs, this is your time to do it. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Karen.
The Fruita Youth Action Council, they're electing officers for leadership roles, president, vice president, secretary. So that's a new step for them. They're going to have a movie night on December 17th, and for grade 6 to 12. And so they're moving along. We have police commission tomorrow. I did have a question from someone about, do we know what the plans are for the Mormon church and any kind of rehab there?
Yes, they received a demolition permit from the planning department probably about a month ago, I believe, maybe even longer than that, or 6 weeks. And they're going through a process with the state to identify if there's asbestos before they can begin the demolition.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass it along.
All right, she muted herself, so I think she's done, right? All right, Kyle. All right, we're gonna move into Ken.
Downtown Board is helping put on the Cups fundraiser this Saturday. I believe it's Saturday at Copper Club. Fundraiser, there'll be some chili, beer, all to go to raise money for breast cancer research. Agency meets, I believe, tomorrow. Bill Carlson is filling in for me from Palisade. I did have a question about city, like the rooms we have at the rec center and even at the civic center. Do we ever rent those out to, like partner organizations for free, or do we charge every organization a fee to use those?
I'm going to try and go off memory here, but I know it's slightly different for the different facilities because of the differences in demand. But I believe with a lot of our nonprofit partner agencies, we offer a free rental here at the Civic Center for sure.
Okay.
And then there are some partnerships at the community center, but there's a pretty high demand there for both programming and pretty constant rentals of those rooms because they're the only rooms in the city at 100 people.
Okay. Just that I've been opening up Cavalcade a few times for the National Monument folks to have meetings in town during the day, which is fine when I'm around from COVID. It's easy for me to go over there, but in the future, I may talk to you about seeing if we can let them use rooms if they ever want to.
I did talk with the superintendent there, Nathan Soder, gave him all the information on what they could use. There were some date conflicts and then there were some capacity problems or issues with the rooms here.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for me.
I missed the last planning commission meeting because I had a conflict, and Parks and Rec hasn't met yet, but I'm assuming we'll be up soon with our new director. So.
Sounds good. Matthew?
GJEP held special meetings last week to interview candidates for the executive director position. Tomorrow morning at 9, we kind of go through and may or may not make a decision at that point in time. For that, I don't know if people saw in the Sunday paper, Senator Chris Hansen from Denver introduced some draft legislation to triple the property tax rate on short-term rentals. So just want to kind of bring that up since that was part of our last workshop. So just when I said there was no way the state would ever tackle that, tells you how good my crystal ball is.
Well, you can introduce legislation all day.
Yeah. Yeah. You can find that information, forward it to me.
Yeah, glad to.
All right, anything else?
No, sir.
All right. I've got just a couple things. FTAC had a special meeting last week to talk about which marketing firm we wanted to go with. And so we are going to be pursuing a contract with Colvita. So we will be switching marketing companies. And so it's got to come here before council for the contract. So I think Mike's, Mike, you the one working on the contract, or is it Margaret? Or what do we, or is it Shannon? Shannon's in charge of that. All right, somebody's in charge of that. So that's going to have, and I know we've got some timelines in that we've got to hit for public hearing and that with the contract. So, so I don't know when that's going to come before us. Okay, all right. So we'll see that moving forward. And then again, as you heard from the chamber, we are having our annual board retreat this Friday. So just trying to keep things rolling there and looking at the master plan. That's probably one of the bigger things, and just keeping the chamber profitable and how do we keep it growing and working in our business community. So that is all I have tonight as well. So with that, we are going to adjourn at 8:50 PM.